Drums thundered through the royal palace as Shanite spun across the floor like fire brought to life. Boom! 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 The crowd screamed in amazement. She dances like the spirits of the earth are inside her. No human moves like that. King Zuberi gripped the arms of his throne, unable to breathe, as Shanite's ankle bells exploded against the stone floor. Her body twisted with impossible grace, her feet moving faster than the drums themselves. The nobles stared in disbelief. Warriors slowly lowered their spears. Even servants abandoned their duties just to watch her. Then Shanite leapt into the air, spun, and dropped to her knees before the king in complete silence. The entire palace froze. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, suddenly, King Zuberi stood up and shouted, "Enough!" The musicians stopped instantly. The king descended from his throne, walked toward Shanite with trembling hands, and slowly fell to his knees before her. Gasps filled the palace. A king kneeling before a dancer? Queen Nalia rose in alarm, but the king could not take his eyes off Shanite. "Ask me for anything," he declared loudly before the entire kingdom. "Gold, cattle, jewels, anything, even half of my kingdom, and it shall be yours." The palace erupted into chaos, and at that moment, the richest men in the kingdom realized one terrifying thing. This girl's dance was powerful enough to change the fate of an entire kingdom. Before men feared her name, they desired to see her dance. In the wealthy river city of Mavuno, where kings traded ivory, merchants carried gold in leather sacks, and nobles lived behind carved stone walls, there was a girl named Shanite. She was not born noble. Her mother sold roasted grain in the market beneath the burning sun, while her father was a poor drummer whose rhythms were so powerful that villagers once said his hands could command rain itself. But poverty followed them like a curse. Some nights they slept hungry. Some mornings Shanite watched her mother pretend not to be starving so her daughter could eat the last piece of bread. Then, one terrible season, famine entered Mavuno. Crops died, rivers shrank, children cried through the night from hunger, and Shanite's father collapsed while playing drums during a village ceremony. He never rose again. At his funeral, mourners gathered beneath gray skies while slow drums echoed through the village. Women cried loudly. Men lowered their heads. Shanite stood silently beside her mother, staring at her father's covered body. Then, suddenly, she stepped forward, barefoot, small, thin. The drummers continued their sorrowful rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. And Shanite began to dance, not with joy, with grief. Her body twisted like smoke rising from fire. Her feet struck earth like pain itself. Her arms reached toward the sky as if she was trying to pull her father back from the world of the dead. The mourners stopped crying. Even the elders stared in shock. The dance carried sorrow so deep that people felt it in their bones. That day, the village understood. This girl carried something rare. As years passed, Shanite's gift became impossible to ignore. She danced at harvest celebrations, at weddings, at royal feasts, at victory ceremonies, and every time she danced, crowds gathered like rivers flowing toward the sea. She did not move like ordinary dancers. She became the rhythm itself. Sometimes she danced softly like moonlight touching water. Other times she moved like a storm tearing through trees. Her waist rolled with elegance. Her feet struck with power. Her turns were so smooth people believed the wind itself carried her. Soon wealthy merchants began throwing gifts before her feet. Gold bracelets, silk cloth, cattle, silver coins, land. One chief gave her 20 goats after watching only a single performance. Another man offered her an entire farm. But Shanite's fame became truly dangerous the day powerful men began losing control of themselves while watching her dance. Some abandoned business deals. Some neglected their families. Some spent entire fortunes simply to watch her perform again. There were whispers across kingdoms. Be careful, the dancer from Mavuno. She can empty a rich man's pockets with one performance. She dances, and men forget reason. Then word of her beauty and talent reached King Zuberi. King Zuberi ruled the richest kingdom near the great river. His palace was filled with gold pillars, carved ivory, exotic skins, and servants dressed in silk. He was a man feared by enemies and obeyed by all. But he loved entertainment more than wisdom. The moment he heard about Shanite, he ordered his guards, "Bring her to my palace immediately." Messengers traveled for days to find her. And when Shanite finally entered the royal palace during the Festival of Fires, the entire kingdom gathered to witness the performance. Torches burned across enormous walls. Drums lined the palace floor. Nobles sat beside generals. Merchants sat beside chiefs. Queen Nalia watched quietly from beside the throne, her sharp eyes studying everything. Then the drums began. Boom, boom, boom. Shanite stepped forward slowly. The room fell silent. At first, her movements were gentle, elegant, controlled. Then the rhythm changed. Faster, hotter, wild. Shanite exploded into motion. She spun like fire caught in wind. She leapt like a gazelle escaping hunters. Her ankle bells rang furiously against the stone floor. The crowd shouted in amazement. Warriors pounded their chests. Women screamed with excitement. Even old priests forgot themselves and stood watching. Then Shanite leapt into motion. She spun once, twice, 3 times, and dropped to her knees before the king. Silence swallowed the palace. Then King Zuberi stood abruptly. "Ask me," he roared. The entire court jumped. The king descended from his throne and stood before Shanite, trembling eyes. "Gold, jewels, land, cattle," he shouted before the kingdom. "Ask for anything." The crowd leaned forward. Then came the words that shook the palace. "Even if it is half my kingdom, it shall be yours." Chaos exploded. Ministers shouted in panic. Nobles looked horrified. One elder nearly fainted. Queen Nalia rose instantly. "My king!" But Zuberi raised his hand. "No," he declared. "Before all witnesses, my promise stands." The palace erupted in whispers. Half the kingdom? For a dance? Some men looked at Shanite with envy, others with hatred, and some with fear. That night, the palace became a nest of conspiracy. Rich merchants secretly visited Shanite's chambers. "Ask for gold," one whispered. "You will become richer than queens." Another general approached later. "Ask for land," he advised. "You could rule beside the king." Another noble spoke with poison in his smile. "Ask to become his wife." Queen Nalia heard all the whispers, and she understood the danger. Because kingdoms had fallen over lesser obsessions, that same night, Queen Nalia visited Shanite alone. No guards, no servants, only silence. "You made a king kneel," Queen Nalia said quietly. "Do you understand what that means?" Shanite remained silent. Queen Nalia stepped closer. "Men who could not control armies are failing to control themselves because of you. One wrong request tomorrow could drown this kingdom in blood." For the first time, fear entered Shanite's heart. The next morning, the royal court gathered again. Everyone waited anxiously. King Zuberi smiled proudly from his throne. "Speak, Shanite," he announced loudly. "What do you desire?" Silence filled the palace. Shanite looked around slowly, at the nobles wrapped in silk, at ministers covered in gold, at wealthy merchants. Then beyond the palace doors, she saw starving workers waiting outside the gates. Thin children, hungry mothers, old men weakened by drought. And suddenly she remembered her own childhood hunger. She remembered her father dying poor. She remembered nights her mother pretended not to be hungry so Shanite could eat the last piece of bread. Then she lifted her head. "I do not want half the kingdom," she said softly.
The court sighed in relief, but Shanite continued. I want half the royal treasury distributed among the starving villages destroyed by famine. Silence. Pure silence. The wealthy nobles looked horrified. One minister shouted, "Impossible!" Another yelled, "That treasury belongs to the crown!" Rich merchants began protesting loudly. But Shanite did not stop. Open the granaries, she declared boldly. Dig wells for dry villages. Return stolen lands to widows. Feed hungry children before feeding palace feasts. The court exploded in outrage. She is mad. She wants to bankrupt the kingdom. This girl is dangerous. King Zuberi looked trapped because he had made his promise publicly, before chiefs, before nobles, before priests, before the kingdom.
And a king who broke his word before witnesses lost honor forever. Then Queen Navalia slowly stood. The room became quiet. To everyone's shock, she bowed her head toward Shanite. I support her request. Gasps filled the palace. Then the elders bowed too, then chiefs, then warriors. Pressure filled the throne room like rising floodwater. Finally, King Zuberi slammed his staff against the floor. So be it, the palace shook with noise, and the richest men in the kingdom realized the terrifying truth. Shanite truly had brought powerful men to their knees and taken their wealth, but not for herself, for the poor, for the hungry, for the forgotten. Granaries opened across the kingdom. Food reached starving villages. Wells were built. Children survived famine. Widows reclaimed stolen land. And for generations afterward, people told the story of Shanite, the girl whose dancing was so powerful that kings knelt before her, and wealthy men trembled whenever the drums began to play.